The morning light arrives gently over Kensington Gardens, painting the trees in shades of amber and gold. The city is still waking, and in this quiet hour, the world feels softer somehow, as if holding its breath. Among the pathways and flower beds, a small figure stands perfectly still before a bronze statue. She's maybe 7 years old, wearing a coat too large for her frame, clutching a handful of daisies wrapped in brown paper. Her eyes are fixed upward, studying the face of the woman immortalized in metal, and her lips move in a whisper no one else can hear. Some legacies refuse to fade. They linger in the spaces between monuments and memories, in the quiet prayers of strangers, in the flowers left by hands that never knew touch but understood love. This is a story about one of those moments when the past reaches forward and touches the present, when a child's whisper becomes something more than words carried away by wind. The statue stands surrounded by other offerings, roses still wet with dew, handwritten notes tucked beneath stones, a teddy bear leaning against the base. People come here from all corners of the earth, drawn by something they can't quite name. Some come to remember, some come to grieve, and some, like this little girl, come because they have nowhere else to bring their hopes. Tourists will arrive later with cameras and guidebooks, marking this as another stop on their journey through London. But right now, in this suspended hour between night and day, the garden belongs to those who come for different reasons. An elderly man sits on a distant bench, head bowed. A woman in a nurse's uniform pauses on her way home from a night shift, touching the statue's base with careful reverence. These are the pilgrims of the heart, and they understand what this place represents. Princess Diana's statue was unveiled on what would have been her 60th birthday. The bronze captures her with 2 children at her side, a detail that speaks to everything she was. From the moment it appeared here, the statue became more than art. It became a sanctuary. People bring their pain here. They bring their gratitude. They bring their children and tell them stories about a princess who wasn't like the others, who touched the untouchable and loved the unloved. But let's return to the girl with the daisies. Her name is Emma, though she sometimes forgets people used to call her that before she went to live at the children's home on the edge of Hyde Park. She comes here every Sunday morning, always at dawn, always alone. The staff at the home think she's sleeping late on weekends. They don't know about these secret pilgrimages. Emma lost her mother 2 years ago, lost her in the way that makes everything afterward feel like living underwater, sounds muffled and colors dimmed. Her mother used to tell her stories about Princess Diana, about how she held hands with people everyone else was afraid to touch, about how she looked at children the way mothers look at their own, about how she cried real tears and laughed real laughs and made the world feel a little less cold. When Emma's mother died, the stories remained. They became the thread Emma held onto when everything else unraveled. And when she discovered the statue existed, just a short walk from where they'd placed her after the funeral, she knew she had to go. That first visit, she brought nothing. Just stood there staring, trying to understand how someone could be both gone and somehow still present. Now she brings flowers. Daisies because they're simple and cheap, and because her mother planted them in window boxes every spring. She talks to the statue the way she used to talk to her mother before bed. Tells her about the other children at the home, about the nightmares that still come, about missing someone so much it feels like your chest might crack open. This morning, she's brought something else too. A drawing she made with colored pencils, carefully folded to fit in her coat pocket. It shows 2 figures holding hands beneath a sun drawn with wild yellow rays. She's been carrying it for 3 days, trying to find the courage to leave it here. The garden around her stirs with gentle sounds. Leaves rustle overhead. A robin calls from somewhere nearby. The Thames flows in the distance, constant and unchanging. Emma unfolds the drawing and places it at the statue's feet, weighing it down with a smooth stone she found by the park gate. Then she steps back and begins to whisper again. She tells the statue about the dream she had last night. In it, her mother was wearing a blue dress and standing in a field of light, and when Emma tried to run to her, she couldn't move. She woke up crying and couldn't go back to sleep. So she came here, to the only place that feels like someone might be listening. The wind shifts direction, moving through the garden with purpose. It lifts the edges of the notes tucked around the statue, makes the flowers tremble, eyes as it touches her face, and for just a moment she feels something she can't explain. Not a voice, not a touch, but a sense of being held, of being seen, of mattering to someone somewhere. The morning light catches the bronze just right, and the statue's face seems almost alive, almost capable of expression. Emma opens her eyes and stares, her heart beating faster. She knows it's just metal and light and shadow, knows statues don't breathe or blink or care. But knowledge doesn't always change what the heart feels. She starts to cry, not the loud sobbing of a tantrum, but the quiet tears that come from someplace deeper, from the part of us that understands loss before we have words for it. She cries because she misses her mother, because she's lonely, because she's 7 and the world is too big and too hard and she doesn't know how to carry all this weight alone. Someone approaches from behind, footsteps careful on the gravel path. Emma doesn't turn around. She's learned that solitude is safer than the questions strangers ask. But the presence doesn't leave. After a moment, a soft voice speaks. "Would you like to sit for a bit, sweetheart?" Emma turns to find an elderly woman standing a respectful distance away. She's wearing a long coat and a silk scarf, her white hair pinned back elegantly. Her eyes are kind in the way that suggests she's familiar with sadness, has learned how to hold it without being crushed by it. Emma shakes her head, wiping her face with her sleeve. But the woman doesn't leave. Instead, she moves slowly to the bench nearest the statue and sits, leaving space beside her. She doesn't push, just waits, her gaze moving between the statue and the child. Something about her patience disarms Emma's defenses. After a long moment, she walks over and climbs onto the bench, keeping a careful gap between them. They sit in silence for a while, watching the garden wake fully into morning. The woman speaks first, her voice carrying the texture of memory. "I met her once, you know. Princess Diana. It was a long time ago now, at a hospital where I worked as a volunteer. She came to visit the children's ward, and everyone thought she'd stay for an hour, shake some hands, pose for photographs. But she stayed all afternoon, sat on the floor with the children, listened to every story they wanted to tell." Emma glances at her sideways, curious despite herself. The woman continues, her eyes distant with recollection. "There was one boy who wouldn't speak to anyone. He'd been in a terrible accident, lost his parents, just like... Well, he wouldn't talk or eat or even look at people. But Diana sat with him for almost an hour. Didn't try to make him speak. Just sat there holding his hand, humming softly. And eventually he looked at her. Then he smiled. Then he whispered something only she could hear." "What did he say?" Emma asks, her voice small. The woman smiles. "No one knows. Diana never told. But afterward that boy started healing. Not just his body. His heart too. That's what she did. She saw the pain in people and sat with it, never pretending it wasn't there, never rushing past it to get to something easier." Emma thinks about this, her fingers tracing patterns on the bench. "Did she have magic?" The woman laughs gently and it's a sound like wind chimes. "No, darling. Something better than magic. She had empathy. She had courage. She had the ability to look at someone who was hurting and say with her whole being, 'I see you. You matter. Your pain is real and it deserves to be held.'" Emma looks back at the statue, seeing it differently now. Not as something distant and untouchable, but as a reminder of a person who was real, who walked through the world carrying her own wounds and chose to reach out anyway. The woman shifts in her seat, reaching into her pocket. She pulls out a small pin, no bigger than a coin. It's enamel, painted with tiny flowers and a ribbon. She holds it in her palm, letting the light catch it. Diana handed these out at a charity event I attended years ago. One for everyone who came. She wanted us to remember that small gestures matter, that we all carry the capacity to make someone's day a little brighter. She extends her hand toward Emma. I've kept this for 20 years, waiting to understand why. Maybe it was meant for you. Maybe this is how her legacy moves forward. From heart to heart, from hand to hand. Emma stares at the pin, then at the woman's face, searching for a trick or a condition. But there's only genuine warmth there. Slowly, she reaches out and takes it, closing her fingers around the cool metal. It's heavier than she expected, solid and real. Thank you, she whispers. The woman nods. You know, she used to say that everyone needs to feel loved. Everyone needs to know they're not invisible. She spent her life proving that with action, not just words. And now we get to carry that forward. You get to carry it forward. Emma looks at the pin again, then at her drawing lying at the statue's base. How? By being kind when you don't have to be. By noticing when someone is sad and sitting with them. By remembering that your pain doesn't make you broken. It makes you human. And humans, darling girl, are capable of extraordinary things when they choose love over fear. The garden has fully awakened now. More people are arriving, their voices carrying across the paths. But in this small pocket of space, Emma feels something shift inside her. Not a cure for her grief, not an end to her loneliness, but a spark of something she thought had died with her mother. Hope, maybe, or purpose. The understanding that pain can be transformed into compassion if we're brave enough to try. She pins the small token to her coat right over her heart. The woman watches with approval, then rises slowly from the bench. I should go now, but I'll be here again next Sunday. Same time, if you'd like someone to sit with. Emma nods, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. The woman reaches out and gently squeezes her shoulder, a touch that says everything words can't. Then she walks away, her footsteps fading into the morning sounds. Emma stays on the bench a while longer, her hand resting over the pin. She thinks about Princess Diana sitting with a boy who couldn't speak, holding his hand until he was ready to try. She thinks about her mother, who held her the same way through thunderstorms and bad dreams and all the small terrors of childhood. And she thinks about the woman who just gave her a piece of history, a tangible link to kindness that spans decades. The statue stands before her, unchanged and unchanging. But Emma sees it differently now, not as a monument to someone unreachable, but as a mirror reflecting what's possible. Diana was real. She laughed and cried and felt afraid. She made mistakes and felt inadequate and struggled with her own darkness. But she chose again and again to reach out, to see people, to love them in their brokenness and remind them of their worth. Some lights never fade, Emma thinks, repeating words she doesn't know she's creating. They just find new hearts to shine through. She stands and walks back to the statue, placing her hand on the cold bronze. Thank you, she whispers, for listening, for staying, for showing people like me that sadness doesn't have to be the end of the story. The wind moves through the garden again, carrying the scent of flowers and earth and possibility. Emma turns and begins walking back toward the home, but her steps are lighter now. She's carrying something with her that wasn't there before. Not answers, not certainty, but connection. The knowledge that she's part of a larger story about what it means to care for one another, to hold space for pain, to choose tenderness in a world that often feels too hard. Behind her, the garden continues its quiet work of holding grief and hope in equal measure. The statue watches over it all, a silent guardian of the truth that love, once given freely and without condition, never truly dies. It moves through the world in small acts of kindness, in the whisper of a child who needs to be heard, in the wisdom of an elder who knows when to sit and when to speak, in the space between strangers who become for a moment something more. This is Diana's legacy, not the tiaras or the headlines or the fairy tale that ended too soon. But this, The child who learns that her pain can become purpose. The woman who passes forward a gift she's held for decades, trusting it will land where it's needed. The garden that becomes a sanctuary for anyone brave enough to bring their whole, broken, beautiful heart. Emma will return next Sunday, and the Sunday after that, she'll bring more flowers, more drawings, more whispered conversations. And one day, when she's ready, she'll bring another child who needs to know they're not alone. She'll sit with them the way the woman sat with her. She'll tell them about a princess who chose to see people, really see them, and how that simple act changed the world. Because this is how legacies survive, not in bronze or marble, not in museums or history books, but in the quiet transmission of compassion from one generation to the next. In the moment, a child learns that their grief doesn't disqualify them from greatness. In the courage it takes to keep showing up, keep whispering, keep believing that somewhere, somehow, someone is listening. The morning light continues its slow journey across Kensington Gardens. The flowers will wilt and be replaced. The notes will fade in the rain. But the statue remains, and so does the invitation it extends to everyone who passes by. Bring me your pain. Bring me your hope. Bring me your most vulnerable self. And I will remind you that you are seen, you are valued, you are loved. Some whispers become prayers. Some prayers become action, and some actions echo forward through time, touching lives that haven't yet been lived, healing wounds that haven't yet been opened. This is the extraordinary thing that happened when a little girl stood before a statue and dared to speak her truth out loud. Not a miracle, something better, something human, something that reminds us that we all carry within us the capacity to be someone else's answered prayer, if only we're willing to stop and listen to the whispers that surround us every day, the whisper of a child who needs to be seen, the whisper of grief that wants to be held, the whisper of hope that refuses to be silenced. In the end, Diana's greatest gift wasn't her title or her fame. It was her willingness to be present with people in their pain, to touch the untouchable, to love the unloved, to prove through action that every single person matters. And now that gift lives on in a 7-year-old girl wearing a small enamel pin over her heart, walking back through the morning light, carrying forward a legacy of compassion she's only just beginning to understand. This is how the world changes. Not all at once, not through grand gestures or sweeping declarations, but through small moments of connection, through the courage to show up with our whole hearts, through the choice to pass forward the kindness we've received, trusting it will multiply in ways we can't predict or control. The little girl will grow up. She'll face new challenges and deeper sorrows. But she'll carry this morning with her always. The statue, the woman, the pin, the understanding that she's part of something larger than herself. And when life feels too heavy, when the darkness presses too close, she'll remember standing in a garden at dawn, whispering to a bronze figure, and feeling, for just a moment, absolutely seen. That feeling will become her compass. It will guide her toward a life of service, of empathy, of reaching out when it would be easier to turn away. She'll become a teacher, perhaps, or a counselor, or simply someone who remembers to look at others the way Diana once looked at a ward full of suffering children. With absolute presence, with fearless love, with the conviction that every human being deserves to know they matter, and somewhere in whatever space holds the truth of who we are beyond our time on Earth, perhaps Diana smiles. Not because she wanted monuments or pilgrimages, but because the work continues. Because her choice to love loudly in a world that often demands silence inspired others to do the same. Because a child found hope in a garden on a Sunday morning, and that hope will ripple outward in ways both seen and unseen, changing the world one whispered conversation at a time. Some lights never fade, they just find new hearts to shine through.